Drive Time on RTE Radio 1, sponsored by Ulster Bank. No matter what business you're in, make our business banking team yours. Ulster Bank Ireland TAC is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Next month marks 30 years since the death of Aidan McAnespie, a young Catholic man who was killed by a British soldier at a border checkpoint in County Tyrone. The 23-year-old was on his way to a Gaelic football match when he was shot by a soldier in a lookout post. The soldier claims it was an accident. No one's ever been prosecuted in connection with the killing. Over the next few days, we'll hear fresh witness accounts of the circumstances surrounding Aidan McAnespie's death. We'll hear of questions surrounding the police investigations of new evidence and also why his family feel the Dublin government could help them finally find justice 30 years on. Our reporter Barry Lenihan is here with me. And Barry, Aidan McAnespie died in February 1988. Just remind us of the circumstances, please.
Well, Aidan McAnespie was shot in his hometown of Aughnacloy in County Tyrone on the border with Monaghan in the south. He died right beside his GAA club, Aughnacloy. Now, today cars pass freely between Tyrone and Monaghan, but in 1988, Mary, there was a hard, harsh border. A notorious checkpoint existed between north and south at Aughnacloy, and locals there have been telling me how many Catholics were constantly harassed by police and soldiers as they crossed the border. But I started off on the same walk Aidan took before he died with his eldest brother, Sean McAnespie.
This is the main Dublin Derry Road. This is where we're walking now. Was once a big massive checkpoint. It was a notorious checkpoint. It would have been one of the most notorious known checkpoints on the whole border.
There are houses now. What used to stand here?
Where the wall and all is, that wall is, on both sides was all built up, security fence and such like. About that entrance there would have been a lookout tower up there where the machine guns and stuff would be.
Many's the morning you'd have got up and the soldiers would have been standing at the front window, knocking the front window and looking in at you.
Philomena and Michael Muldoon lived beside the checkpoint.
Because you were right beside it when you went outside to do anything at the back. Yeah. They were shouting out at the singers at you.
There's a big searchlight and they used to shine this big huge spotlight right into our back window. But they said, we'll eventually get you. And this is, as I say, they kept intimidating you. Just pure aggravation all the time.
Tell me about your wedding day. What happened?
On our wedding day, whenever we come down to the checkpoint, the soldiers asked me for my ID, my name, and my wife for her names and what was going on. And we just catch ourselves going, what's going on? And us dressed in wedding gear. And they knew with all the cars behind. And they said that we're going to be searched on our wedding day to take us back to the search centre.
Were you there in your wedding dress?
Yes, the whole works.
Brian MacDonald is the local doctor.
It's funny when you see the West Bank and the Gaza Strip and even the North Korea, South Korea. I mean, these guys were in a power because you would have the soldiers lying there, their blackened faces and guns trained at you. It's frightening enough if you're a young fella. It was particularly hostile, and certainly there was no attempt to minimalise the hostility.
What we went through, it was totally extreme. Every day, as I say, you're going through this. And the only time I had an Alsatian dog. I had a Alsatian dog in the car with me. And whenever I had the dog, they couldn't search me because the dog would have went mad. They actually threatened to shoot the dog. They engaged their gun on one occasion and they said, we're going to shoot that fucking dog. The soldiers after the Lochgard shooting, the soldiers said, we are going to get you all. You're all IRA bastards and all this. This is the way they treated us. Everybody in their eyes were suspects. The RUC would have been telling us information that these boys were all terrorists, which was totally wrong. We were Catholics living in a staunch Protestant town.
Michael Muldoon in Aughnacloy there. Barry, before his death, Aidan McAnespie was also constantly harassed by security force members. What happened to him?
Aidan McAnespie was a quiet man. You could hardly hear his word, I'm told. A bit of a divil as well, the youngest in a family of 7. But critically, Aidan McAnespie was an innocent man, but came from a Republican family. He was harassed and singled out for over 7 years when going through the Aughnacloy checkpoint.
He was stopped, pulled in, the car were ripped apart. The car were ripped apart. So then they dragged him, pulled him out, dragged him, and they pulled him out of the car by his heels and they dragged him into the back, into the searching area.
Aidan had to go through the checkpoint at least twice a day for his job at a poultry farm near Monaghan town. His work colleagues remember the harassment, how he could be stopped for up to 4 hours.
Every time we went through the checkpoint, they'd ask him, what's your name? Where are you going to? What's your name, Aidan? And them obviously knowing him, you know what I mean? So this is what he was up again all the time,
And some of the stuff was pretty vicious as well. I mean, urinating on the windscreen of the car.
That's right, and his lunch as well. I remember one time he talked about he had his lunch in the back of the motorbike, and they took the bike in to search it, and then when he opened the lunch it was all wet or whatever. You could imagine, what they'd done, so therefore it was binned, and that kind of harassment,
You looked around. If he wasn't there, you knew what was happening, and then he'd arrive in, and it could be any time of the day. So he always knew what was going on. So he just wanted to get through, but he couldn't, and that was it.
They gave him hell going through, morning and night. It was an awful ordeal, for years.
Aidan's cousin Moretta and his sister Margot.
I was in the house one day that he come in, and he come in. I can remember me and my mum were there, and he come in, and he was nearly crying, and there was tears in his eyes, and he had to walk out of the room, and I goes, what's wrong? So then he come in a wee while, and he says they had him by the throat. His throat was all red where they had him, but he didn't want mummy to know about it,
Your mother was very devoted to him in terms of getting through that checkpoint.
Yes. Oh, she was great.
She would go down with him, didn't she, Margot?
She used to sit in the car, go through the checkpoint, because they weren't as bad when the mother was there, and then she'd go down with her bike in the evening to wait on the other side to come across with him, because otherwise he was 2 hours, and when he'd be on his own, then they would give him a lot of hassle.
Aidan went through this on a daily basis. The mother had to take Aidan escort Aidan through the checkpoint, sit with him until he got through to the Monaghan side, and God rest Lizzie had to walk back.
Rain, hail, snow, or dark nights or anything. She took him home.
Security forces made several threats to Aidan's life. Here's his workmate John.
Aidan actually told me what they said, that they were gonna kill him at some stage. He said that to me on different occasions. That's what they were gonna do. And when he said it to me, what do you say to somebody when they tell you something like that? This was the norm for him.
And even on the morning of the shooting, another threat.
About 11:30 to 11:45, Aidan was going to a funeral over the border. He pulled in to get diesel, and the next thing was, all of a sudden, nowhere, the army arrived, and they just piled the rifles straight up at him and kept following him with the rifles, and sneered and laughed whenever he got the diesel.
They told my father the week previous that a bullet for him, that they're going to shoot your son. I moved to the south.
You said to Aidan, why don't you move to the south?
So he says, well, who's going to stay with Dan Ma? Who's going to look after Dan Ma? Have I done that?
Aidan's brother Sean there, even minutes before his death, Barry, Aidan was looking out for his mother.
Yeah, that's right, Mary. He'd been at a family funeral, but went home to light a fire for his mother so the house would be warm when she got back. Aidan then set off for the local Gaelic grounds. He was togging out for Aughnacloy in the Jim Devlin Cup against Kaleeshall. He'd walked through the border checkpoint when tragedy struck on the 21st of February 1988.
We're just coming in. This is Aughnacloy. That's their training pitch there on the right hand side there. We're coming up to the Aughnacloy grounds here, and just here in front of us is the monument. This is where he was shot. You see them hills there? Just come down the other side of the football field. That's the river there. That's the border over there. This is where Aidan was shot. Just walking along, he had his kit bag on his shoulder, just as the way you see thousands and thousands of people walking to football matches today.
Aidan was killed at around 10 to 3 on that Sunday afternoon, right beside the Aughnacloy GAA pitch. The fatal bullet was fired by a soldier in a lookout post. It came from a distance of 283 metres. Raymond McCartney is standing where Aidan was shot.
200 yards down the road there, and I was leaning in through an open window of a car into the passenger side. There's a fella that I taught at school. Beautiful day, and
very similar to what we have at the moment.
It was sunny and probably a bit warmer. I was talking away and I heard a crack. There was a lot of talk at the time about 3 shots, and I would be adamant to this day, and I never ever doubted that there was only 1 shot fired, in my opinion. And then I heard someone groan, moaning, and I saw someone lying on the ground.
When
On the
we're
left
standing
hand,
at the
just
moment.
about standing here, yes. It was on the road though. Cars, the strange thing was, it was surreal. Cars kept driving past.
So Aidan's body lay.
And he lay there, and cars sort of drove round him and sort of manoeuvred round him and slowed down and drove on. And all I can recall, then I realised it was Aidan McAnespie, and he was wearing a wee leather bomber jacket, I recall, and a pair of jeans, and I think he's wearing a white t-shirt. I could just see a pool of blood spread out on the ground and over his white t-shirt, and he was very pale.
The soldier involved said he'd fired accidentally, as his wet fingers had slipped when moving the gun. Let's have a look at the memorial. What does it say there?
In loving memory of Aidan McAnespie, murdered at this spot by Crown forces on the 21st of February 1988, aged 23 years. Anytime you come in there, out there, if I'm hearing my own there, say a wee prayer. Say a wee prayer coming out. Here, my mother used to walk in the evenings. My mother used to walk down here every evening, say a decade of the rosary at this grave, and walk home.
On a Sunday evening, the sun shone in the sky. He walked his way to the Gaelic pitch. Did he think he was going to die?
The harassment actually continued worse after Aidan was shot. But once they took Aidan out of it, luckily anybody else, like myself, they left everybody so afraid, terrified, that, like he told you, we'll do the same to you as McAnespie.
Also, after Aidan was shot, my father and mother were getting phone calls in the middle of the night asking to speak to Aidan, and roaring and laughing where Aidan was.
The troubles, lots of terrible events. What makes this one stand out?
The fact that they threatened Aidan, and they carried out the actions with they threatened to shoot Aidan on different occasions, and they actually carried out the action. I suppose that's what leaves it different. Everybody knew Aidan was innocent.
Oh, why did you do it? Have you not the guts to say? You say it was an accident, or even a ricochet. But like Aughnacloy and Gibraltar, your lies are well renowned. You murdered Aidan McAnespie on his way to the Gaelic crown. Yes, you murdered Aidan McAnespie on his way to the Gaelic crown.
Drive Time on RTE Radio 1, sponsored by Ulster Bank. No matter what business you're in, make our business banking team yours. Ulster Bank Ireland TAC is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
The elderly father of a young Catholic man fatally shot at a border checkpoint in County Tyrone says he wants to meet the soldier who killed his son. Aidan McAnespie was killed by a bullet fired by a soldier in a lookout post while on his way to a GAA match in February 1988. Aidan's father, John, says he wants a full account of what happened before he dies. Now, in a few moments, our reporter Barry Lenihan will bring us fresh witness accounts of some of the circumstances surrounding Aidan McAnespie's death. But first, Barry, you have been speaking to John McAnespie. What did he tell you?
John McAnespie says he just wants the truth. His youngest son, 23-year-old Aidan, was shot near a border checkpoint at Aughnacloy in County Tyrone on the 21st of February 1988. As we detailed in yesterday's programme, the soldier who fired the fatal bullet claimed it was an accident. No one has ever been prosecuted for killing Aidan McAnespie. Mr McAnespie came from a Republican family but wasn't involved in violence. He'd been subjected to years of harassment by security forces before his death, including several threats to his life. Now, over the last 30 years, his family have fought tirelessly for a full account of what exactly happened, but with little success. John McAnespie is 82 years of age. He's buried his wife and one of his daughters since Aidan was killed. His health is ailing, and John says he just wants to know what exactly happened the day his son died.
I'd like to hear the truth. That's what I want to hear. We didn't get any truth. We got nothing. We got nothing. So all we're looking for is the truth. And that's it. That'd be a big satisfaction to me. I was looking forward to it anyhow. You're up against a stone wall. You weren't going to get it. I wasn't going to get it. So I'm still waiting.
You miss Aidan, I'm sure.
I certainly do. Yeah. There's a big miss, surely.
Would you like to meet the person who fired the shot?
I would. I'd like to hear what he'd have to say. For what reason, I don't know. For why that person done it, but we're just waiting. So, another soldier that would been stopped with, and he told us that he had a bullet. I have a bullet in here in the rifle for him, for Aidan. So it wasn't a very nice thing to hear. It was a short time after then Aidan lost his life. A big miss.
Do you think you'll get answers before you go?
I don't know. We're just waiting in hope. Just waiting in hope. Whether we get it or not, I don't know. But they're very slow in coming with it anyhow.
Aidan McAnespie's elderly father, John, there. Barry, who is the soldier who fired the bullet that killed Aidan, and who's the person John wants to meet?
David Holden. He was 18 at the time of the shooting, so he's now approaching 50 years of age. He was a member of the Grenadier Guardsmen.
And what's his version of events?
Mr. Holden said at the time he'd fired 3 bullets accidentally as his wet fingers had slipped when moving a heavy machine gun. Aidan McAnespie, it's claimed, was hit in the back by a ricocheting bullet. Now, his family have always disputed this account, as did the Taoiseach of the time, Charles Haughey. The then head of the Catholic Church, Cardinal Tommaso Fiach, called the killing murder.
What happened to David Holden after the shooting?
Mr. Holden was charged with unlawfully killing Aidan McAnespie and held in military custody, but criminal charges were dropped in September 1988. The then Director of Public Prosecutions in Northern Ireland said the evidence wasn't strong enough to warrant prosecution. He was fined by the British Army, David Holden, and allowed return to full duty. He was given a medical discharge from the Army in 1990 and the shooting declared an accident.
There was an inquest.
Happened in 1993. The inquest heard how the only soldier to give evidence had gone absent without leave. David Holden, meanwhile, was never called. The McAnespie family boycotted the hearing as the soldiers involved wouldn't attend.
And what did that inquest conclude?
Well, the jury at the inquest found that soldiers at the checkpoint in Aughnacloy had contravened standing orders about the handling of a weapon. The coroner said Mr. McAnespie's death should have been avoided. His sister, Aidan McAnespie, gave this reaction at the time.
We feel that the jury have actually now at that stage left it open. They haven't actually said whether it was done deliberately or whether it was an accident, and it has been left open, and it has left the family with some hope for the future as well in continuing the fight to get justice.
Now, 10 years after the inquest, this would have been in 2003, there was another investigation into Aidan McAnespie's death.
The Historical Inquiries Team, or the HET, was set up to reinvestigate controversial Troubles-related killings, and in October 2008 it released a report on the Aidan McAnespie case.
And what did that find?
Well, the HET concluded that David Holden's claim that his wet hands slipped on the trigger of his machine gun were so remote that they could be, quote, virtually disregarded. Investigators said the statistical odds were strongly against the shooting being an accident. The report also raised severe doubts over the initial RUC investigation into Mr. McAnespie's death. Specifically, it noted how David Holden wasn't questioned until 24 hours after the event and how forensic experts didn't examine the scene until the day after.
Now, we heard from Aidan McAnespie's sister earlier, Aidan McAnespie. That was after the inquest in 1993. What did she say after that report?
Well, the report was read to Miss McCabe on her deathbed. Her family say it was a source of great comfort that the British Army's version of the killing had been finally overturned after her years of campaigning.
And has there ever been an apology for the killing?
When in 2009 the British government expressed deep regret over the shooting, it maintained, however, that the fatal bullet ricocheted from the road in spite of the HET findings.
There was a review announced.
Yeah, in 2016, the DPP in Northern Ireland, Barra McGrory, said he would review the decision not to prosecute David Holden. This review is ongoing.
What's it considering, or what's it likely to consider, is there new?
Time of the shooting, Mary, there were 2 separate police inquiries, the RUC investigation and also a Garda inquiry, which was unprecedented at the time, and I'll have more on that tomorrow. But some witnesses gave evidence to one and not the other, and so prosecutors in the north will examine testimony from some people who were at the checkpoint at the time of the shooting for the very first time. Here's what some recalled, starting with Bridie McBride.
Aidan came down in the car and got out and took his football bag and went out the thing, and it wasn't that long until I heard shot. So I run out to the door, and there came two down out of the pillar, first army pillar thing, and them cheering and clapping.
Who was cheering and clapping?
A soldier and a policeman. They came down from the tower, so they did.
Here's Martina Mulgrew.
I lived a few doors up in Canadian Park at the time, and went down to a neighbour's house that just had a son. Next thing we heard the gunfire, and we looked out, and the police, one policeman and one British Army come down from the tower, laughing and cahoing, and got into a car sitting, and away they went. And that's what I saw. So it was a ginger-haired policeman. Like I did, I went to the police and I told them about the soldier and the policeman, but nothing, that was it. You know, when they come down clapping and laughing, but I goes, no, there's something going on here, somebody's been killed.
The British Army claims 3 shots were accidentally fired. However, nearly all those in the vicinity of the shooting recall just one. The road around the checkpoint was closed for a time the day after Aidan McAnespie was shot. Tony McBride was at Aughnacloy GA field when Aidan was shot, but also lives right beside the checkpoint. You heard one shot. They say there were 3 shots. What happened the next day?
They closed the road here for must have been a couple of hours, and the next thing they were shooting. I don't know, you wouldn't know what an automatic shot a man should put off, but there's a wee burst of fire. And then it showed the next day all this road was marked, and there was nonsense they done it the next night.
Bridie McCartan was driving through the checkpoint at the time of the shooting. She brought her evidence to the Gardaí. However, last week she handed a written statement to the McAnespie family, which they forwarded to their legal team. It's hoped her evidence will be considered north of the border for the very first time. Her account is recalled here by her daughter Grania.
So in her words, she says, I was travelling from my home in Skinnahergna, which should have been the townland, Emmy Vale, to visit her aunt in Dungannon, so you had to go through the Aughnacloy checkpoint. It was then when she met Aidan coming towards the Monaghan side. She says, I drove on to the red light, as you always did, and stopped. It was a nice sunny February day, and I was sitting with my window down, waiting at the red light for the green light to come on when she heard the gunfire. One thing I should pause and say is that when she did meet Aidan that day, she noticed that his face was very flushed and red, and I suppose when we have said that to a few people, they said that wasn't really like Aidan. He was always quite pale complexion, and that's one thing that stood out in her mind when she thinks back. So she heard the gunfire, then the light turned green and she drove into the checkpoint and stopped, and I suppose historically over the years she'd have always been there for a long time. But on this particular occasion, she said that she always remembers it clearly. She could hear joking and laughing inside, and someone shouted, that will cost another bomb or bob. She wasn't clear of what actually they were saying. I suppose maybe it was the English accent. Then, as far as she could remember, she thinks it was a policeman. He came out of the hut and rushed her on quite quickly, and as I say, in her mind she would be keen to point out that that wasn't common occurrence. But on that particular day they wanted her out, they were waving her on, they never even asked for anything, they just told her to drive on. So she knew something had happened, but she had no idea of what actually had happened.
What did she do with this account? She went to the local politician.
Yes, for advice, and I suppose wanted to make sure that this story was heard, because obviously she thought what was going on, and the laughing that was standing out in her mind. You know, what were they laughing about? Gunfire had just went off and they were laughing. You know, I wouldn't think that's where there should have been a state of panic, not laughing and joking. So he advised her then to go to the guards, and she went.
Drive Time on RTE Radio 1, sponsored by Ulster Bank. No matter what business you're in, make our business banking team yours. Ulster Bank Ireland Tac is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
The family of a young Tyrone man fatally shot by a British soldier near a border checkpoint 30 years ago claims the Justice Minister Charlie Flanagan is withholding critical evidence of the killing. Aidan McAnespie was killed while on his way to a GAA match in Aughnacloy in February 1988. And as we heard yesterday, the shooting was declared an accident, but a subsequent investigation said that was highly unlikely. At the time, the Gardaí also carried out an inquiry into the shooting, but almost 30 years on, the findings have never been released. Mr McAnespie's family is now seeking an urgent meeting with Minister Flanagan. The family also wants to know why some of Aidan's body parts were missing during a second post-mortem. Our reporter Barry Lenihan has been following this story. He has more for us today. Let's start with the Garda inquiry, Barry. What can you tell us about that inquiry into the shooting?
Yeah, well, 23 23-year-old Aidan McAnespie was fatally shot on the 21st of February 1988. The soldier involved said he'd fired 3 bullets accidentally as his wet fingers had slipped when moving a heavy machine gun. Mr McAnespie, it's claimed, was hit in the back by a ricocheting bullet. His family were sceptical, pointing to the years of harassment he'd suffered going through the checkpoint at Aughnacloy. Now, the Charles Haughey government appointed then Deputy Garda Commissioner Eugene Crowley to investigate the killing. Mr Crowley began work 2 days after the shooting, but the inquiry was a source of high controversy.
A separate Garda inquiry, led by Deputy Commissioner Mr Eugene Crowley, will be operating from Monaghan, where witnesses from the north and south will be interviewed about Sunday's incident.
The unprecedented move to set up the Garda inquiry into the killing of Aidan McAnespie at Aughnacloy has been welcomed by his family, who urged potential witnesses to speak to the team. Peter Robinson of the DUP called on the British government to condemn the decision.
The Progressive Democrat spokesperson on Justice, Deputy Mary Harney, has said she's concerned and unhappy that the Garda Deputy Commissioner, Mr Eugene Crowley, met members of Sinn Féin on Saturday to discuss the McAnespie shooting.
Local MP Ken McGuinness.
The whole inquiry is a bit of a farce. It's a propaganda stunt sponsored by your government, and the investigation which will get at the truth is the one that is being carried out here. All you have, in fact, is, in terms of medical evidence, is access to a body which has already undergone a post-mortem, and therefore where the evidence will not be clear.
The Taoiseach has defended the government's decision to set up an inquiry into the death of Aidan McAnespie.
But it must be said that a number of events and circumstances, the allegations of a shoot-to-kill policy investigated by Mr Stalker, the early release of Private Thane, and the shooting at Aughnacloy have combined to create the impression that the security forces are above the law. It is inevitable that a suggestion that death was due to a freak accident of an extraordinary kind must give rise to disbelief.
In the Commons this afternoon, the British Prime Minister, Mrs Thatcher,
I believe that justice north of the border is for the United Kingdom and south of the border for the Republic.
Margaret Thatcher ending that series of clips. Barry, what happened at the end of the inquiry?
Deputy Commissioner Crowley submitted a report to the then Minister for Justice, Jerry Collins, on the 8th of April 1988. However, his report has never been made public or even his findings shared with the McAnespie family.
So what might be in that report, Barry? Because at the time of the inquiry there was a second post-mortem on Aidan McAnespie's body.
Yeah, Aidan McAnespie was laid to rest in Clara in Monaghan. Initially, a post-mortem was carried out at a hospital in Canavan, but his body was exhumed with Deputy Commissioner Crowley's approval for a second autopsy in Monaghan. Dr. Brendan MacDonald was at the second post-mortem. He says some body parts were missing.
Without getting too technical, if you're shot directly, well, obviously there's a different pattern with an entry wound and an exit wound, right? And similarly, the trajectory of the bullet is different if it goes straight in. Now, if it comes off the ground just below you, and obviously it goes on an upward trajectory, well, then one could see where the entry wound is and then where the exit wound is. But, and there's the crux of this, a lot of his front chest tissues weren't put back in beside the rest of his body. So I often have thought of it, to give a true picture, you wouldn't have had to see to the sternum where clearly the bullet either was the entry wound or the exit wound. So it's not apparent which is which. There was a lower back wound. Now, does that suggest that was that the entry? It's difficult to say if that was the entry because that was obfuscated as well. So the actual forensics around the evidence were definitely obscured. So whilst the consensus was, Jesus, guys, this was obviously a direct hit here, it wasn't possible from a scientific perspective to say this was a direct hit because the evidence was missing. Now, I don't know
why was it missing.
That is $1 million question.
His rib cage was missing.
Oh yeah, certainly the front of it, and that potentially was in the way of the trajectory of the bullet was missing. So there's no evidence to say, well, it went in here, out here, that's the way it went. So it's all gone.
Aidan McAnespie's family don't know where the missing body parts are or who authorised their removal. They feel the Crowley report may have those answers. They're hoping Aidan can have a full Christian burial while his father is still alive. Here's Aidan's brother, Vincent McAnespie.
Aidan's body parts
it was with the rib cage being held back and kept back, it leaves it the family, Aidan's rib cage would be entitled for Christian burial. And it's one of the things that we've been pushing with the solicitors for Aidan's rib cage to get a Christian buried. Under the laws, the Catholic Church were fully entitled to it. That's one thing that we're fighting at the solicitors the minute to get Aidan's body parts back, so that to be a Christian burial to be carried out, yes.
That's Aidan's brother, Vincent McAnespie. What else might be in this report, this Crowley report, Barry?
Well, a significant amount of evidence was gathered. Many witnesses came forward as well, Mary, and some of those would have been reluctant to participate in the RUC inquiry into the killing. The McAnespie family strongly believe the report could help them finally piece together what exactly happened to Aidan. For now, they claim vital evidence is being withheld by the Department and Minister for Justice as this report is not being released. Here's Aidan's brother Vincent again.
The family would be very interested in in their Crowley report to be released to us. So there's a lot of evidence and a lot of people went forward from the local community thinking that it helped the family and it helped to get the Aidan's case solved. It seemed to be thinking that it helped the family and it helped to get the Aidan's case solved. It seemed to be we're up against a brick wall with the Crowley report and we can't get any forward.
What's the latest interaction with the department on this report?
The Irish government have been fairly consistent since this was raised in the Dáil 10 years ago and Aidan's 20th anniversary, where they refused to release the report on the grounds of anonymity for the witnesses.
Aidan's cousin, Brian Gormley.
Aidan's family can't understand, which I'm sure most sensible thinking people don't understand, what is the point in actually investing a load of time and money doing an investigation, carrying out the exhumation of the body, and actually for it to sit in a cupboard. So the family are calling once again for the Crowley report to be released, again approaching Aidan's 30th anniversary.
And at no stage were the family told that the report was simply for government eyes only?
No, at no stage. No one was made aware at that time. Everybody was under the impression that there was going to be a full investigation carried out by the Irish government, and the findings of that investigation, which expect from all investigations, would be released to the very least to the family.
Why is it so important, that report?
This report may not actually reveal anything, but if that be the case, then we're saying release the report. We are of the very firm view that Aidan was deliberately and cold-bloodedly shot down on the cold light of day, on that day in a premeditated action. But we would like to see that report, release the Crowley report, which may help to throw a bit of light.
Peter Corrigan of KRW Law is the family solicitor.
Why have an investigation into it if you don't disclose to the loved ones the conclusions?
Would you like to meet Charlie Flanagan, the Justice Minister? Would you like him to release this immediately?
He should meet the family and release it immediately and give full disclosure and transparency in relation. He doesn't have the right to withhold relevant material from the loved ones.
In 2008, the then Taoiseach Bertie Ahern promised to consider releasing the report and said he would discuss it at Cabinet, and nothing ever came of that. Is there a role for the current Taoiseach in this, Leo Varadkar?
Yes, so Leo Varadkar has said publicly that his role is to act as a guarantor of the Good Friday Agreement, and a part of the Good Friday Agreement is dealing properly with legacy issues, and I would ask him to uphold the integrity of the agreement that the Irish government is a co-guarantor to.
You think he's reneging on that agreement by failing to release this report?
Failing to release the report is reneging on that agreement, which was signed and brought so much hope to the north of Ireland.
You've been in touch with the Department of Justice. What is the department saying?
It says it can't release the report as many witnesses only came forward on the basis of anonymity. It says it released a summary of the report's conclusions to Mr McAnespie's family in 2002. However, his family feel and have always felt this summary was wholly inadequate. They maintain vital evidence of the killing is still being withheld.
You mentioned to us yesterday as well, Barry, that the Director of Public Prosecutions in the North is reviewing this decision not to prosecute the soldier David Holden who shot Aidan McAnespie. Where is that review at now?
That review started almost 2 years ago, and a spokesperson for the DPP in the North says it's still under active consideration, but the McAnespie family feel the Crowley report could play a big part.
That review is ongoing at the minute, and we think that this Crowley report could play a very important role in actually deciding whether it's charged to be brought.
And that review, you're told, is due very soon, you were told recently.
Well, as far as we're aware, the solicitors have been advised that review is progressing and is close to conclusion. We obviously would like to see it happening as 2 years further on, so we'd like to see it happening sooner rather than later. We feel that the Crowley report can obviously play a part in that investigation.
The family's legal team recently sent new and more detailed ballistic evidence to prosecutors in the north. Peter Corrigan again.
We forwarded that evidence to the Attorney General in the North with a review to reopening the flawed inquest in 1993, requesting him to compel the soldiers to give evidence at an inquest. The PPS are reviewing now the ballistic report. We've put forward in our submissions and written submissions that the new ballistic experts report now provides a reasonable prospect of securing a conviction against the men that the soldiers that murdered Aidan McAnespie.
The family members want to get to the truth of actually what happened on that day, but at this stage in time there's been quite a few people have subsequently deceased during the time. We're all getting older, all the members of Aidan's family are all getting older, but we think that it's time now that the truth can be explained to these people, and if the Crowley report can actually play some part in that, then I would call on the Taoiseach Leo Varadkar to use his influence to actually release this report to the public and let people see exactly what their conclusions were at that time.
Aidan McAnespie's cousin Brian.
Drive Time on RTE Radio 1, sponsored by Ulster Bank. No matter what business you're in, make our business banking team yours. Ulster Bank Ireland TAC is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
It's 30 years next month since the death of Aidan McAnespie, a young Catholic man who was killed by a British soldier near a border checkpoint at Aughnacloy in Tyrone. The soldier claimed it was an accident. Aidan McAnespie's family disagree, saying he'd been subjected to years of harassment by security forces before his death. No one has ever been prosecuted in connection with the killing. And as the 30th anniversary of Aidan's death approaches, leading GAA figures feel more should be done to commemorate his name, especially given that he was killed on his way to a Gaelic football game. Our reporter Barry Lenihan has been following this story for us. And Barry, Aidan McAnespie and his family, they're steeped in Gaelic games.
And Aidan, of course, was on his way to tug out for Aughnacloy against Caleishal in the Jim Devlin Cup in Tyrone when he was killed. He died right beside the GAA fields. Aidan, a big Tyrone supporter, distraught, I'm told, when Kerry denied them in the 1986 All-Ireland football final. His cousins Brian and Eilish represented Tyrone. His sister-in-law Brenda, one of the finest players to play the game. 4 nieces now in the Monaghan ladies team, and a nephew Ryan, who is an integral part of the men's Monaghan team.
There is a GAA club named in his honour. Where's that?
Boston, Mary. Thomas Drum from Fermanagh and first Johnny Girk from Meath are founding members.
We were talking about it for a couple of years, and as Aidan McAnespie was shot going to a Gaelic football match, it was a good opportunity for us to start a club, and there was a lot of anger and resentment because a nationalist was shot going to a Gaelic football match, and it was a good opportunity for us to start a club in his name. And we organised a meeting at the end of 1995, and about 50-60 people at it, and the club started that day.
It was an All-Ireland club, Johnny, wasn't it? There were people from every county of that.
People from the 32 counties, like, you know, over the years, like some of the best players in Ireland played with us, like Peter Canavan, Joe McNally, Ollie Murphy, Greggy McCartan.
Why name it after Aidan McAnespie? Why him?
Well, for me it was because of the anger and the resentment after him being shot going to a Gaelic football match. It kind of hit a chord with people all over the place, even in Boston where we were. Like, it was years later, like when the club formed, like Aidan McAnespie was shot in 1988, 95 again we started the club, but we were always talking about it, and the anger was still there, you know. And
this was over the other side of the Atlantic. People were still talking about it.
Oh, they were, like, you know, because of the fact that the GAA was a 32 county sport, and he was going to a Gaelic football match, and it was something that probably hadn't happened before, where there was a young national shot going to play. I know there was GAA people killed, but as he was walking to the Gaelic football pitch, it was something that hit hard all over, you know.
Do you remember the moment that somebody says, well, maybe Aidan McAnespie is the fella we should be naming the club after?
Oh God, but I'd say there were a lot of people in that room would have remembered the day he was shot too. No, there would have been a lot of people remember that time in 88, so there would have been.
The club is very, very successful. Like, it has won several North American championships, several Boston championships. Like,
could be driving from here to Cork, and you go to traffic lights, could be in Portlaoise. You could see an Aidan McAnespie jersey going, a young one going across the street. So
O'Neill's have told us that Aidan McAnespie is the best-selling club jersey in the world. That's a huge lift for us. And when we came up with the name Aidan McAnespie, we didn't know the McAnespie family. We didn't know anybody.
It's been a short 30 years when you think of it, isn't it? It has been a short time.
Starting the club was about keeping Aidan McAnespie's name alive, and I think we've done a fairly good job of that.
And this week, Barry, you visited the memorial, which marks the spot where Aidan was shot.
Yes, and in 2003, when Tyrone won their maiden All-Ireland, their first stop was that memorial. The captain that day was Peter Canavan.
I think I've said enough. It's time to take Sam to Tyrone.
When Tyrone won their first All-Ireland in 2003, you crossed the border at Aughnacloy. I think you stopped at the memorial, am I right in saying?
We certainly did. Again, every time we would have went through Aughnacloy and gone down to Croke Park, the Tyrone flag would be flying high over Aidan's monument. Again, it wasn't a political gesture. It was something that a lot of us felt was the right thing to do. By the Tyrone bus stopping and taking the Sam Maguire out, it was something that we felt needed to be done. Aidan McAnespie would have been at Croke Park, would have been cheering us on in 2003 if he had been alive. It was the least that we could do.
30 years next month since he died, and his family are still not at peace.
Absolutely, and that's so disappointing. Look, everybody knows what happened, and the sad fact of the situation is, I believe at the time Commissioner Crowley was given the job of carrying out an investigation on behalf of the Irish government, and within months that was completed and handed on, and we're still waiting to find out what the findings of his investigation were. 30 years on, we're still waiting on the Irish government to release the findings. It's a crying shame, and it's hard to believe, but look, I think at this stage, John coming 82 years of age, that enough people will see sense and do the right thing. Bad and all, as Aidan's death was, I think what has confounded the situation is the cover-up and some of the things that happened after it. Hurtful to the McAnespie family, to GAA people and the wider nationalist people in particular. It's time to set a lot of things straight, and I know that the GAA are very good at keeping out of politics, but on this occasion, 30 years after Aidan's death, one of their own members going to support his own football club, that they should apply a bit of pressure to the Irish government so that likewise these findings can be released, and I think that's the very least that they could do in this case.
The GAA may argue, look, we're about playing, not about getting involved in other stuff.
Absolutely, look, and I can understand that. I'd be very reluctant that the two should mix, but on this occasion we're talking about one of their own members. I think it would be totally understandable that all they ask for is for the facts to be released.
Should it be a priority for the new Uachtaráin and the new Ard Stóra Hór?
30 years on, I would like to think that they would be brave enough to make that stance. I don't think it would be a major step for them to take, but I think it would be the right step for them to take.
Tyrone All-Ireland winning captain in 2003, Peter Canavan there. Now, Barry, you've also been speaking to a former president of the GAA.
Yeah, Fermanagh Peter Quinn was president between 1991 and 94.
The investigations that have been undertaken by the security forces and by the authorities in the north, from a layman's position, and I'm a layman in legal terms, but from a layman's position, they appear to be grossly inadequate. The possibility that Aidan McAnespie was targeted for murder has never been investigated properly, and in my opinion it should be investigated. It was the first instance where a GAA man appears to have been targeted for assassination. Coming from or going to a GAA match, it had never happened before. Now that doesn't mean to say that other GAA people hadn't been killed by the security forces, but there was never one where a player seemed to have been so blatantly targeted as appears to have been the case in the Aidan McAnespie incident.
You're a former president of the GAA. Does the GAA have a role to play here?
Well, the GAA can't get involved directly, but what the GAA can do is they can put pressure on the government, particularly the government in the Republic, but also on the government in Northern Ireland, because let's face it, the GAA is a 32-county entity and they have influence in the north. Maybe not as much as they would like, and they have more influence in the south, of course. And I think the GAA should use that influence, if there is a movement at the present time, to have a proper investigation and to have further and deeper analysis done than was done in the past, then the GAA should be to the forefront in promoting that concept and ensuring that that is done.
Is the GAA doing enough at present, do you think?
30 years is a very long time. Aidan McAnespie is a long time dead. And other than in Tyrone and in Aughnacloy in particular, and probably in the province of Ulster more widely, outside of that, that incident is almost forgotten by now.
Can the association do more, do you think?
I believe they can. I believe that the association should be to the forefront. If there is the possibility of a further investigation, then I think that the GAA should be throwing the weight behind that possibility.
The GAA would say, sure, we're just about playing it.
Sometimes matters outside the playing field are very important, and this was an incident that had implications both on the playing field, because he was a playing member, and off the playing field. I think it would be very remiss of the GAA to say that they have no role whatsoever. Their role may be limited relative to the role of politicians and people like that, but certainly the GAA have a role. And while the GAA is not a political organisation, it was one of their members who was killed. Most people would believe that I should use the word murdered rather than killed in that context. I think that the GAA has a role to play. If there is a further investigation, the GAA should be active in supporting it.
And that's the former GAA President Peter Quinn. Now, Barry Linehan has been reporting on this story all week for this programme. Barry, just remind us of the questions that are still there, the ones that have not been answered in the McAnespie case. What does Aidan McAnespie's family still want to know?
Well, David Holden is the soldier who took responsibility for firing the shot. He was 18 at the time of the incident. But did he really fire the shot, or was he taking the blame for someone else? Was Aidan McAnespie really shot by accident by a ricocheting bullet, or was he shot deliberately? Why were several threats made in his life by members of the security forces? Was he shot in the back, or perhaps his chest? Why do several witnesses recall hearing laughing and clapping from the army checkpoint at Aughnacloy when Mr McAnespie was shot? And why did a policeman and a soldier drive away from the checkpoint within seconds of the shooting? Why did many people in the vicinity of the killing hear just one gunshot when the army claimed there were three? And why was a flurry of gunfire heard from the checkpoint the very next day when bullet marks appeared on the road where Aidan was shot?
You've highlighted this week as well several questions around the police investigation.
Yes, including why were some of his body parts missing, Aidan McAnespie, during a second post-mortem south of the border? Who authorised the body parts to be removed, and where are they now? Why was there not a full technical and forensic examination of the scene immediately? Why won't the Irish government publish the Garda report into the shooting? Why say it's to protect the anonymity of witnesses when several witnesses I've spoken to don't recall ever being told the report would be confidential? If the shooting was an accident, why didn't the soldiers involved give evidence at an inquest or cooperate with the historical inquiries team? That team concluded that David Holden's claim that his wet hands slipped on the trigger of his machine gun were so remote that they could be virtually disregarded, which prompts the question, what exactly happened on the 21st of February 1988?
And here's how some of Aidan's friends and family feel as the 30th anniversary approaches.
For years after he died, I couldn't bear to go down that road.
Some people would forget we as his friends and that, you'll always remember him and that, and his family and that, it's sad.
To a lot of other people, it's just a statistic. It's just something that happened. Whereas we knew him and we knew the whole story and we knew everything about it, so that's what makes it different.
For me, I would like to hear them saying, we did it. Don't even think a reason would matter. I don't think anybody that only lived at the time really realises the type of person he was and what he was doing,
What do you think of the fellow who fired the shot?
I wonder how is his conscience,
In many respects you could say the fellow who shot is perhaps a victim as well in all this.
He probably is. I've often thought of that, how would you live with that? Your life, as you say, still a young man, bound to be playing on your mind.
For the first year or two after, I'd say there wouldn't have been a day would have went past some stage of the day you would be stopping thinking about it, That's how much an effect it would have on you, and I'd be fairly, country, took an effect on me, especially when I knew him as well as I did. Been there when it happened.
Would you find it hard going back all over it again?
I do. I don't talk about it at all. It is hard to talk about, yeah, but hopefully the truth will come out eventually for the family. He was just an ordinary fella like me. You know, there's nothing different about him. He was just an ordinary lad from Aughnacloy, going to his work, wanted to play football, court women, drive cars. He was just an ordinary lad.
We're not saying forgiveness or that there, but with no hate. You know what I mean? We just want to hear why.
I still believe things are changing, and I honestly do believe that there will be something come out yet. You have to have faith, or I don't know where you'd be.
You don't want it in 10 years' time, like you want it soon. I'd love Daddy to hear. Daddy needs to hear it. You know, he's so much. He's lost so much in his life. It's just terrible. He needs closure in this now.
That was Aidan McAnespie's sister, Margot Loughran, ending that report by Barry Lenihan. And you can listen back to any of this week's reports on the McAnespie case by logging on to rte.ie/drive time.
Drive Time on RTE Radio 1, sponsored by Ulster Bank. No matter what business you're in, make our business banking team yours. Ulster Bank Ireland Tac is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.